Here's what nobody expected. Not long ago, the world's most powerful nation was gearing up for a clash with India. Trade wars were being prepared, sanctions were being sharpened like weapons, and the message was loud and clear: do what we say or suffer the consequences. For many, it looked like a showdown was inevitable. India was painted into a corner, and the pressure was meant to break it. But look around today. The script has been flipped. The same voices that once spoke with threats are now speaking with cooperation. The same hands that were ready to slam doors are now reaching out to shake hands. And the reason is not weakness. The reason is not submission. The reason is power. India's power. Because here's the truth. India did not change. India didn't bend. India didn't surrender. While the storm of economic pressure came crashing down, India held its ground, still buying energy where it was cheapest, still protecting its industries with taxes, still refusing to be forced into someone else's fight. And that unshakable stance revealed something the world had underestimated. India was no longer a player waiting for instructions. It was a power writing its own rules. Now let's understand why this is so important. The real shift didn't happen in New Delhi. It happened in Washington. When the world's strongest nation changes its strategy so fast, it's not because they suddenly grew kind. It's because their plan failed. Pressure failed. Threats failed. And what replaced them was not generosity but necessity. Because the cost of losing India became too high. Why? Because India is no longer a country standing on the sidelines. It is the center of gravity in the modern world. Its geography controls the trade routes of the Indian Ocean, where half of global commerce flows. Its markets represent hundreds of millions of new customers that the biggest corporations desperately need. Its energy demand makes it one of the most valuable buyers on the planet. And its military position is the key to balancing the rise of Asia's dominant powers. Without India, no strategy in Asia works. Without India, the plan to contain expansion collapses. Without India, the world's economic future tilts toward rivals. That is why the tone has shifted. That is why the words once filled with fire are now filled with diplomacy. Because ignoring India is no longer an option. But here's where the story gets even more powerful. India didn't just survive the pressure, it thrived under it. It learned the lessons of resilience. It showed the world that independence is stronger than intimidation, that self-reliance is stronger than sanctions, and that confidence is stronger than commands. This is not just a story about one country standing tall. This is a message to every nation, every leader, every individual who is told they must follow someone else's path. You have a choice. You can resist, you can protect your people, you can hold your ground and force respect. Think about what this means. The old playbook of dominance is breaking apart. The era where power meant demanding obedience is fading. Now real power comes from endurance, from leverage, from refusing to give in when the pressure mounts. And India has shown the world how it is done. But let's be clear, this is not the end of the fight. This is just the beginning. The world is watching how India uses this moment. Will it secure lasting partnerships? Will it demand fair trade? Will it lock in the technology, the investments, the opportunities that will fuel its rise for decades? Because windows like this do not stay open forever. And that is the lesson for all of us. When opportunity arrives, you do not hesitate. You seize it. When pressure comes, you do not break. You grow stronger. When the world underestimates you, you prove them wrong with action. So here is my call to you. Stand tall when challenges come. Refuse to be bullied. Build your strength. Build your independence. And build your future. Do not wait for permission to rise. Claim your place. Because the world respects only those who refuse to surrender. The game has changed. The balance of power has shifted. And the path forward belongs not to those who fold under pressure, but to those who stand firm, demand respect, and shape the future on their own terms. When the world applies pressure, most people, most nations, most competitors crumble. They bend, they compromise, they give up pieces of themselves in the hope that submission will make the pressure stop. But the truth is this: the moment you give in to pressure, you teach your opponent that you can be controlled. You show them that with enough threats, enough weight, enough intimidation, you will eventually collapse. That is why standing firm in the face of pressure is not just resistance, it is the creation of true power. Because power is not measured when things are easy, when the seas are calm, when the road is smooth. Power is measured when the storm is raging, when the weight feels unbearable, when every voice around you tells you to give up and compromise. In that moment, when you refuse to break, you become stronger than those who tried to bend you. Standing firm does not mean being reckless. It does not mean ignoring reality. It means understanding your position, your value, your leverage, and refusing to let fear dictate your choices. Look at the greatest examples in history, in leadership, in nations, in individuals. Their defining moments came not from comfort but from resistance. When they were told they could not win, when they were told to fall in line, when they were told the cost was too high, they stood their ground anyway. And in that decision, the pressure shifted. It moved from their shoulders to the shoulders of those trying to control them. Because when intimidation doesn't work, the intimidator is left powerless. This is why standing firm builds respect. People may not agree with you, they may not like your choices, but when you refuse to bend, they are forced to acknowledge your strength. And respect built on strength is respect that lasts. The moment you back down under pressure, you send the message that your boundaries are negotiable, your principles are flexible, and your power can be bought or bullied. But when you hold the line, when you make it clear that your survival, your dignity, your independence are not for sale, then the world begins to see you differently. Not as a follower, not as someone to control, but as a force to reckon with. And here's what most people don't realize. Standing firm in the storm doesn't just protect you, it transforms you. Every time you resist breaking, you grow stronger. Every time you endure pressure, your capacity to endure increases. Every time you walk through the fire without giving in, you come out more resilient, more confident, more unshakable than before. Pressure, instead of destroying you, becomes the forge that hardens you. And that transformation is permanent. Once you've proven to yourself that you can withstand what others thought would break you, you carry that strength into every battle that comes after. The irony is that pressure is meant to weaken you, but if you face it head on, it becomes the very thing that builds you. Every weight that tries to crush you is also an opportunity to train your strength. Every challenge that tries to overwhelm you is also a chance to prove your resilience. Every attack that tries to silence you is also a platform to amplify your voice. That is why those who endure pressure without surrendering rise above everyone else. Because while others are busy retreating and negotiating their survival, you are busy proving that survival is not enough. You came to dominate, to lead, to set the terms instead of accepting them. When the world pressures you, you have two choices. You either let that pressure define you, or you let it refine you. You either allow it to dictate your actions, or you stand so firm that the pressure itself is forced to change direction. True power is not in having no enemies, no struggles, no opposition. True power is in showing that no amount of pressure can break you, that your will is greater than the storm, and that your stance is unmovable, no matter how hard the world pushes against you. Independence is always stronger than intimidation, because intimidation relies on fear, while independence thrives on self-belief and control. Fear is temporary. It fades the moment someone realizes they cannot be shaken, but independence is permanent. It grows with every decision made without outside approval. Intimidation tries to corner you, to convince you that you are weaker than you are, that you must submit to survive. Independence, on the other hand, is the refusal to give up your ability to choose your own path. It is the fire inside that says no matter what pressure is applied, no matter what threats are made, you will not allow anyone else to own your decisions. And once you taste independence, once you realize that you can stand without leaning on someone else's permission, the world can never scare you the same way again. Think about this. Intimidation only works if you believe you need what the other side is threatening to take away. It works when you are dependent on their approval, their resources, their protection. But when you build your own foundation, when you make yourself self-reliant, when you have alternatives and choices, intimidation loses its grip. Independence is like armor. It doesn't make the attacks stop, but it makes them useless. Every person, every nation, every competitor that has built their strength on independence cannot be controlled, because their survival doesn't rely on someone else's mercy. They hold their ground because they know that fear has no leverage when you are not dependent. Independence is not given. It is earned through sacrifice, discipline, and vision. It means working harder now so that no one controls you later. It means developing your own strength so that no one can hold it over you. This principle applies everywhere, in nations, in business, in personal life. Look at the strongest individuals. They are the ones who don't rely on others to validate them. They are the ones who don't crumble when critics try to tear them down. They know their worth, and that inner certainty is unshakable. Intimidation bounces off of them because they are not seeking permission in the first place. The same applies to powerful nations. When a country is independent in resources, in markets, in strategy, threats from the outside world do not break it. Instead, those threats become empty words, bluffs exposed for what they are. Independence is freedom. And freedom is strength. A person who relies on intimidation to control others is already weak, because they have nothing real to offer except fear. But a person who builds independence has lasting strength that no one can take away. The intimidated may win small victories by forcing others into submission, but the independent win the long game by refusing to ever be conquered. Independence means you decide your own future. Independence means you protect your dignity no matter what. Independence means you cannot be bought, bribed, or broken. It is a shield against manipulation and a weapon against domination. And the moment you embrace it fully, intimidation loses its power forever. Real leverage comes from resilience, not compliance, because compliance only creates the illusion of peace, while resilience creates undeniable strength. When you comply with pressure, you buy yourself temporary relief, but sell away your power. You get a moment of quiet, but you lose long-term control. Resilience, on the other hand, is the ability to absorb hits without losing your ground. It is the strength to take the punches and still keep moving forward. That is where leverage comes from. Not in saying yes to every demand, not in bowing down to every threat, but in proving that nothing can break you. The world respects resilience because it cannot be manipulated, it cannot be bought, it cannot be cornered. Compliance comes from fear, and fear is a weakness that others exploit. Once you show that you will give in when enough pressure is applied, you have already lost the game. You might win small rewards for your obedience, but in the bigger picture, you have traded away your independence. Every time you comply, you teach your opponent that pushing harder will get them what they want. And once that cycle begins, there is no end to it. They push, you give in. They demand more, you surrender more. Slowly, piece by piece, you lose everything that made you strong in the first place. That is why compliance is never a real solution. It is a slow surrender disguised as compromise. Resilience is the opposite. Resilience says, no matter how hard you push, I will not collapse. It is the power to withstand pressure and still protect your core values. Resilience does not mean you don't feel the pain. It does not mean you don't face challenges. It means you endure them without giving up your ground. That endurance is what creates leverage. Because once people realize they cannot break you, they are forced to deal with you on equal terms. They no longer come with threats. They come with respect. They no longer demand. They negotiate. That shift happens not because you complied, but because you proved that compliance was never an option. Resilience builds leverage because it creates time. When others expect you to fold quickly, but you hold strong, they begin to feel the pressure themselves. Their costs rise, their strategies fail, their confidence weakens, and eventually the balance of power shifts. The one who was supposed to be weak suddenly becomes the one dictating terms. Resilience exposes the weakness in those who rely on intimidation, because intimidation only works if the other side surrenders quickly. The longer you hold out, the more their strategy unravels. That is the hidden power of resilience. It turns the tables and makes the one applying pressure feel the weight instead. In every great struggle, resilience has been the deciding factor. Nations that survived invasions, businesses that survived market crashes, individuals who survived personal crises. They didn't win because they complied with the pressure. They won because they refused to let the pressure define them. Every failure became fuel. Every challenge became training. Every setback became proof that they could withstand more than anyone expected. That is how leverage is built. The world looks at someone who refuses to break and realizes that the only way forward is cooperation. That moment when threats stop working is the moment true power begins. Compliance makes you easy to control. Resilience makes you impossible to defeat. Compliance gives away your leverage before the battle even starts. Resilience multiplies your leverage every time you endure what was meant to destroy you. That is why real leverage is born not from the act of giving in, but from the ability to endure, to resist, to stand tall under fire. Resilience is not passive, it is active power. It is the proof that no matter how much pressure is applied, you remain unshaken, and that unshakable stance forces the world to respect you on your own terms. Opportunity belongs to those who seize it in the storm, because the storm is where true openings are created. When everything is calm, when the path is smooth, when the environment is safe, everyone sees the same chances. Everyone competes for the same opportunities. And in that kind of setting, the rewards are small, because they are shared by the many. But when chaos hits, when fear spreads, when the storm arrives, most people back away, they retreat, they wait, they hope someone else will step forward first. That is when the few who have courage, the few who have vision, the few who have the strength to move forward in the middle of the storm, rise above everyone else. The storm is the filter that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary, because only those who dare to act when others freeze can capture opportunities that no one else dares to touch. The storm is frightening. It is loud, unpredictable, and full of risk. That is why so many avoid it. But here is the truth. Every great opportunity hides inside some form of risk. The larger the storm, the greater the chance to rise. Because when the majority are paralyzed by fear, competition disappears. Doors that would normally be crowded suddenly stand wide open. And the few who are brave enough to walk through those doors find themselves not only taking opportunities, but also shaping the environment that follows. History is filled with moments where those who acted in the storm defined the future for everyone else. Opportunity in the storm is not about luck. It is about mindset. It is about training yourself to see possibility where others only see danger. Most people look at the storm and see destruction. The strong look at the storm and see transformation. They understand that every collapse clears space for new creation. Every breakdown reveals gaps that can be filled. Every crisis opens doors for those bold enough to enter. The ability to see beyond the fear and into the possibility is what allows you to seize opportunities that others don't even recognize. And here's something powerful. The storm builds credibility. Anyone can succeed when conditions are easy, but only those who succeed in the storm earn respect that lasts. When you achieve victory in chaos, people know it wasn't luck, it wasn't comfort, it was strength. That reputation follows you forever. The next time a storm appears, you're not seen as vulnerable, you're seen as capable. People trust leaders who move in the storm, because they know that person has already proven they can face fear and still deliver results. The storm also magnifies rewards, because opportunities taken in chaos carry a multiplier effect. When markets collapse and you invest, the growth afterward is exponential. When everyone else retreats and you advance, the space you capture becomes yours alone. When others hesitate and you act, you set the direction that others will later follow. That's why storms are not obstacles, they are accelerators for those who dare.
The key is readiness. You don't wait for the storm to prepare. You build your resilience, your vision, your discipline in advance. So when the storm comes, you can move without hesitation. The storm favors the prepared mind, the courageous heart, and the relentless spirit. If you are ready, the storm becomes not something to fear, but something to welcome. Because you know it is the moment when the world resets, when the playing field changes, when new paths open.
Opportunity is rarely handed out in times of calm. It is forged in times of struggle. It is born in the fire of chaos, where most people step back but a few step forward. And when you are among the few, you don't just take advantage of opportunities. You create them, define them, and own them for years to come. Respect is earned by refusing to surrender, not by asking for it, because real respect is never given out of kindness. It is commanded through strength, through consistency, and through the refusal to compromise your principles under pressure. Asking for respect is like asking for power. The moment you beg for it, you prove you don't deserve it. Respect is not something that others hand you willingly. It is something you build by standing tall, by showing through your actions that you will not bend, that you will not allow yourself to be owned, and that your dignity cannot be negotiated away. When people see that you cannot be broken, that is when they respect you. Not because they want to, but because they have no choice. The mistake many people make is believing that if they are polite enough, agreeable enough, compliant enough, others will treat them with respect. But what they really get is tolerance at best, exploitation at worst. Because people do not respect weakness, they take advantage of it. If you show the world that you will sacrifice your dignity for approval, you will be trapped forever in a cycle of giving away pieces of yourself in exchange for crumbs of validation. Real respect comes from the opposite choice, the choice to endure disapproval, to face opposition, to withstand pressure without giving in. That defiance, that backbone, is what separates the respected from the ignored. Respect is always tested in moments of conflict. When times are easy, people may smile at you, they may pretend to treat you well, but that is not respect, it is convenience. The true measure of respect comes when there is a disagreement, when you are under pressure to fold, when others expect you to surrender your principles. If you stand your ground, then even your opponents will begin to respect you. They may dislike you, they may fight you, but deep inside they will acknowledge your strength. Respect doesn't require agreement. It requires recognition. And recognition only comes when you refuse to bow. The strongest leaders, the most influential nations, the most admired individuals in history, all share this trait. They earned respect not by being liked, but by refusing to surrender when it mattered most. They faced threats, they faced criticism, they faced enormous pressure, and still they held their ground. At first, the world may have ridiculed them, attacked them, tried to break them. But once it became clear that they would not surrender, the ridicule turned into silence, and the silence turned into respect, because no one can ignore strength that endures. Respect is also contagious. When you refuse to surrender, you do more than just protect your own dignity. You inspire others to rise with you. People follow those who stand firm. because it gives them permission to find their own courage. Weakness spreads quickly, but so does strength. When you hold the line, when you show unshakable conviction, others see it and feel empowered to do the same. This is how entire movements are built, how entire cultures shift through the example of those who refuse to surrender. And here's something crucial. Respect gained through strength lasts far longer than respect gained through fear. Fear fades the moment the threat disappears. But respect earned by resilience endures even when the conflict is over. People may forget the exact words you spoke, they may forget the details of the fight, but they never forget the image of someone who stood their ground and would not break. That memory becomes a permanent reminder that you are not someone who can be intimidated, and that kind of respect cannot be faked, it cannot be bought, it can only be earned through struggle. The refusal to surrender is not arrogance, it is self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation upon which all external respect is built. If you do not honor your own boundaries, no one else will. If you do not value your own principles, no one else will. Respect begins with the courage to say, "This is my line, and I will not cross it for anyone." Once you demonstrate that conviction, people are forced to treat you differently. They may resist it at first, they may fight it, but eventually they will recognize it. And that recognition is the root of true respect. The future is shaped by those who act, not by those who wait. Because history has never remembered the people who stood on the sidelines and hoped for things to get better. The world moves forward through the actions of those who had the courage to step into uncertainty, who dared to make decisions when others were frozen in hesitation. Waiting is safe. Waiting is comfortable, but waiting never creates progress. It only leaves you at the mercy of those bold enough to move. Every breakthrough in history, every revolution, every transformation came from people who refused to sit back and watch. They acted even when they didn't have all the answers, even when the risks were high, even when the outcome was uncertain. And because they acted, they shaped the direction for everyone else. Action is power because it creates momentum. Waiting is stagnation because it keeps you trapped in the same place. The ones who wait always talk about what they want, what they dream about, what they plan to do someday. But someday never comes for those who wait. It only comes for those who move, who take the first step, who put their plans into motion even before the conditions are perfect. And that's the secret. Conditions will never be perfect. There will always be risk, always be doubt, always be obstacles. If you wait for everything to be safe, you will never begin. But when you act, you discover that progress itself creates new paths, new opportunities, new advantages that you could never have seen while standing still. The difference between the leaders and the followers, between the builders and the spectators, between the remembered and the forgotten, is simply this: action. The leaders acted. The builders acted. The remembered acted. Everyone else waited. Action turns dreams into reality, while waiting turns dreams into regrets. Action transforms ideas into achievements, while waiting transforms ideas into missed chances. Every second spent waiting is a second given away to someone else who had the courage to act. The future belongs to those who act because action builds credibility. People do not follow words. They follow results. You can speak endlessly about your plans, your vision, your intentions, but if you never take action, your words lose all meaning. When you act, even if the result is not perfect, you gain respect because you showed the courage to move forward. You prove that you are not just a dreamer, but a doer. And in a world full of hesitation, action stands out like a beacon. Action also creates learning. Those who wait never make mistakes, but they also never grow. Those who act may stumble, may fall, may fail, but every failure becomes knowledge. Every mistake becomes fuel. Every setback becomes a lesson that sharpens them for the next step. And with each step, they become stronger, smarter, more capable of shaping the future. The ones who wait never get this advantage because they are too afraid to move, too afraid to fail, too afraid to learn. But the future is not written by the fearful. It is written by the bold. Look at every great innovation, every massive shift, every turning point in history. It was never created by people waiting for permission. It was created by those who acted when the world told them to stay still. It was created by those who took risks, who embraced uncertainty, who refused to let fear chain them down. The future bends to the will of those who act, because action has a force that waiting can never match. Waiting hands control to others, but acting takes control for yourself. Waiting leaves you as a passenger in someone else's story, but acting makes you the author of your own. That is why the future belongs to the ones who take initiative. Not the ones who sit in comfort hoping change will come. Not the ones who delay because the timing isn't perfect. Not the ones who wait for guarantees that will never arrive. The future is shaped in the moments of action, by the people who dare to move forward even when the road is uncertain, by the people who choose to create instead of waiting to receive, by the people who decide that they would rather try and fail than never try at all. Expand key point 1, and don't add any ending sentence, and make it lengthy on 600 words without heading.